Hello, everybody. It's Laura Victoria Ward. I am in a Zoom room teaching inner and outer space in my in my pride onesie. Yeah, I got the pride colors on. So I have been thinking that I've been doing a lot of micro movement stuff lately, and I'm just going to mute you guys. You can unmute when you need to. I've got an angel there with Walter. But just so there's no feedback in sound. Oh, there's Abby. And I'm going to also spotlight myself, but I am going to recommend that you actually go to gallery view and not watch the spotlight. It's just so that it just films me. So I've been doing a lot of micro movement videos, and I want to just interrelate how the sort of Laban space and the Laban ideas of flow and even effort relate to micro movement, or can relate to micro movement. So first, let me just define micro movement. So micro movement is very small movement that it may be so small that you can't see it, that it's just like, or it's just the natural rhythm of the body moving. But when we start to engage with it, we can come to a deeper connection into sensation of movement. And in Vipassana meditation and mindfulness meditation, often people are following internal sensation, but they're following internal sensation in stillness. So with micro movement, it's like you're following internal sensation, but you're allowing it the freedom to move. And it's also something that ultimately you're moving towards a total sense of free flow, listening to the body, what the body wants, what would feel good. And feel free to join me in my movement as I'm doing this, because a lot of you are improvisers and totally ready to dive into it. So that is the ultimate is that it's just free flow movement, listening into the body, what feels good. And if I were teaching a class, I would say move as big as you need to move, because first, sometimes we need to move big before we can feel moving small. But I also want to offer that the micro movement is extremely valuable for people who have limited movement, for people who sit a lot, or for people who are at desks all day. Like, you could just micro move at your desk and be getting the benefit of a lot of movement without moving a lot. And I don't mean the benefit in an exercise way of benefit, like you're not working out, you're working in. And the working in is to soften and hydrate tissue. It's so that your fascia is building in a more coherent way. So it's not sort of locking up and blocking up, but allowing some freedom and ease. So we're going to use the basic ideas of three-dimensional space, the really basic Laban ideas of up, down, side, side, forward, backward. I mean, it's not just his idea. They're in so many things, these ideas, but to play with that in micro movement. So let's just play with growing and shrinking with the breath. And when we're going in two directions. So I'm not just growing up, I'm also growing down. So my energy is both ascending and descending at the same time, or my breath is both ascending and descending, but I'm tuning into this movement in the vertical dimension. So, and if it's helpful, actually, you could add your hands to this, because sometimes, like, if we aren't feeling into our body, when we add a little bit of gesture, it can be more specific. So I'm having one hand go down and one hand go up as I breathe in, and then they come back towards each other. And if you felt like, I really want to balance my body, you could do this on one side and then the other, which then would just add a slightly different relationship to it. But feeling into the sensation of moving, feeling into the sensation of lengthening and shortening with the breath. So we're working in that vertical dimension, up and down at the same time, and then coming into yourself. A couple more like that. I'm going to take my hands away and just breathe into it. And then I'm going to switch the idea into the horizontal, so widening and narrowing. And let's add the breath with this, because sometimes like there's the whole way of doing it. If we were doing like a Qigong exercise of just finding the energy widening and narrowing in, and thinking of that widening through the whole side body. So it's not just here in your lungs, it's all the way down into your pelvis, it's into your shoulders, it's the whole thing just expanding sideways. And then narrowing back in. So we're widening out and narrowing back in. So these ideas are also very aligned with centering. Wendy Palmer teaches centering. Mark Walsh is teaching centering. Finding awareness, Mark Walsh's version, awareness, balance, and then co-regulation. And Wendy Palmer's version, which we'll do right now because it's awesome. She's got this thing. What is it? Noble, awesome, shiny. And her thing is awesome. You're going to take your hand on top of your head. And you're just going to inhale and bounce it off as if you've gotten like 6 inches higher. Reaching up there, yeah, and also reaching down at the same time. And then as we exhale, we're just going to come down into something that makes us feel good and happy. So even in the exhale, almost feeling a smile. Maybe it's your kid, maybe it's an animal, maybe it's like the otters, sea otters. I don't know, they're so funny. So I can think about an otter or a fox and it will make me smile. So thinking about something that's really easy to come down and smile. Then we're going to reach out into the side space, the horizontal space. And imagine that your fingers are little lights. And also, we can also imagine that they're little ET fingertips. I used to have a ballet teacher who was also a movement analyst, Jackie Villamel, and she would say, light up your fingers like little ET fingertips. So find or think of like firefly lights. So I'm going to stay with this idea for a second as we're centering and just throw some micro movement in there. Your little ET fingertips are firefly lights, and they're just lighting up that area around there. Or maybe the fireflies are extremely powerful and they're lighting up all around, but you're feeling the sense of a firefly lighting up fingertips, micro movement. Just seeing what that does to you, where you find your center with that. And then feeling the space all around you. So we would say in dance, feeling your kinesphere. In Lava, we might say feeling your dynamosphere, which is the whole possibility of all the movement around you. And let's actually move into that just a little bit. So in typical Laura Ward fashion, I am operating on at least 3 different tangents at the same time. And I do want to say that I've been trying to come into a more slower way of expressing, and that is so challenging. I didn't even have coffee this morning because I was like, I need to slow down so I can help come for a landing with my friends. So back to the Wendy Palmer. We first inhale, finding that length, both directions. We exhale, coming down, thinking about sea otters or something that makes you happy. And then we radiate out to the sides with our ET fingertips, little firefly fingertips. And then we sense the space all around us, coming into our peripheral vision. And as we do that, we're sensing our own kinesphere, our own realm of movement. And then we just let that come in. So that is a type of centering. And hello, Ingrid, welcome. I think you're totally new to us. We've got a lot of people off camera today. Okay, cool. Thanks, Virginia. Yeah, if you feel brave, feel free to turn on your camera. I don't bite. And while this is being recorded, I am spotlit, so it shouldn't show you up. And you can also go to gallery view. So at least you can see 2 or 3 other people. It's more fun when we can be in the community with the community. So yeah, that social centering part of ABCs, awareness and balance, finding our energy, finding our balance, and then social centering where we can actually see each other. Hint, hint. But of course you can come in whatever way is comfortable for you. Okay, so now I'm going to take it back. We did the up and down, we did the side. So I'm just going to name a little bit of what that is also. So in Laban, we would talk maybe about the up and down as being sort of the sense of self, here I am. We might talk about the horizontal, the table, as being the we, the all of us here. And then the forward backward could be action. It could be the I am going to do it. I'm going to move into action. So forward, backward could be action. Yes, look at that. And we can reach into each other there. We can feel that reaching in, going in, and then taking it back. And of course, we have different ways. Like we can offer, we can receive, we can push away, we can pull towards. There's different ways that we can work in that sagittal dimension and plane. And then let's just take it into micro movement, if that feels okay. If you're going for it and you need to move more, then by all means keep the whole body going. But if you wanted to take it, dial it down a little bit, let's take it into just almost like a cat cow in the spine. So maybe head to tail, a little bit of arching and curling, but you could also feel like rippling up or rippling down, letting your body sort of cycle, and I mean cycle like a wheel, in different forward, backward motions. And it could be very free flow. So it's not like forward, backward, or ripple, ripple. And as you're in that rippling, just feel what's happening in your gut body, and especially in your guts and your intestines, your organs. Are you holding them in? What's happening in your center? Are you pushing down? Are they just hanging out there? What is your holding pattern for your belly? And I have to say, this is so cultural. There's so many reasons we might have different ways of holding our bodies. And a lot of it is just the way that we've learned to deal with existing in the world. So Irmgard Berteniev calls it coping with the environment. And I'm going to say it's all of the movement classes you've taken, all of the gym classes you've taken, all of the things that your parents have said to you about your body, all the things your friends have said, all the things the media says. So there's all these different layers of stuff landing on who I am and how I should hold myself, right? So for me, a big one, having done ballet and done a lot of like mat work and Pilates and stuff, even though I really don't care much for Pilates, but is this pull in and up. So what's the opposite of that? Like push down, like bear down into the ground. And like, it can feel even uncomfortable if you're accustomed to doing it, like always being here and feeling like this is the good posture. What is it like when you drop that down, drop into your pelvis, like come alive in that pelvic floor where it doesn't all have to suck up and in, but it can also push down and out. So we could say that that would relate to giving birth, going to the bathroom, any of those things where we want to have more down access into our body. So we could just micro move our bellies a little bit with our forward, backward, maybe some up, down, maybe some side, side, but give it a chance to be its own thing. That's such a horrible thing to say. Be an integrated part of you that you are experiencing, as opposed to something that you need to change, fix, or adapt in some way to make it more acceptable to yourself or other. But just letting yourself sort of find that center, we would call it the lower dantian, right? And if we were talking in like a qigong way, and we can look at different cultures at how they hold that belly. Like there's the there's kind of like the, yeah, I got this, like I got a big belly, I drink a lot of beer, that kind of version. And then there's also like the sort of dropped down. I'm going to do this so you can see me walk. And I like where there's kind of like the pulling along and the belly's very relaxed, which I have to say, often like seeing in Chinatown, like there's a more pull along as opposed to a more American pushing with your feet, pulling with your feet. I'm just throwing all of this stuff into the soup. But in the interest of coming with the idea, which we'll eventually get back into micro movement, of how we land on the ground. So I'm doing this so you can see my feet. And let's take it with just rocking forward and rocking backward. If you're seated, you can rock forward and backward on your pelvis. And again, come into relationship with your pelvis on the ground. But if you're on your feet, just try rocking forward and backward. So we've got our forward and backward. We can also go up and down. We can go up and down, right? I can lift my heels off the floor. I can land. I have to go a little bit forward to lift my heels. Maybe I can go a little bit back to come down. So in ballet, you're always like on the ball of your foot, hardly any weight in your heels. In yoga, you're often back in your heels. So there's all these different possibilities. And we want to explore all of them because our tissue is going to form, our fascia is going to form in accord with what we do. All right, so from that exploration, let's go from a side to side. If you're seated, you can just shift from one hip to the other. Shifting from one leg to the other. And see if you can shift enough that you can pick up a foot and find balance. If your screen is low, like mine is, try to just look out in front of you instead of down at your screen. So I'm still showing you just the lower half of my body. And then we're going to come back to moving forward and backward, but we're going to ripple it. So I'm going to bend my knees and ripple and wave up. So knees bend, I'm rippling and waving my way up. And I'm trying to let that continue all the way from my feet, through my knees, through my pelvis, through my rib cage, lungs, back, spine, to my head, neck, relaxing my jaw, feeling this ripple of movement all the way through. And I could do it from the head down. I could ripple that way also. And then with side side, I could shift my hips, keeping my head actually over my feet and my hips are shifting from one side to the other. Or I can shift my whole body. Or I can wave from one side to the other, from my foot to my head, or more exciting, I can go from my head to my foot. So these are pretty big movements. It could be much smaller. If you look at Axl Rose or Stevie Wonder, they do this. They do that pattern with their head, just rippling through their spine. There may be a little bit of a spiral into that. So if I add a spiral, I'm now getting some more three-dimensional movement, twisting. So all of that is big movement that we could make smaller and bring down into micro movement. I'm coming back to sit down again. So what I want to invite us to do is play with this idea of using forward, backward, side, side, up and down, and then breaking all the rules and letting yourself go in any way that feels interesting. You could do this standing. You could also do this laying on the floor. So it doesn't have to be the way that I'm doing it. You could do it on all fours. In fact, I'm going to show you all fours because that is a particularly rich way to get into this work. And then we also feel the connection of the arms into the body. So this is the listening in to your body and going, it might feel good to try this, or it might feel good to try that. If you spend a long time doing something like Continuum, which is a movement practice developed by Emily Conrad and Susan Harper, and actually a bunch of other people, but really Emily Conrad, you start to listen, you start to hear things. And I think in improvisation, it's the same thing. Sometimes you hear something from the other body that you want to experiment with, but if you're listening into your own body, there will start to be responses of, oh, I actually want to do this, or this might feel good right now. It could be something very small or something very big. So allow yourself to, move in whatever way feels delicious, interesting, curious, exploratory. So movement becomes, instead of a rigid, this is the right way and the wrong way, it's an exploration and an inquiry. It's like a, I don't know. Every day is a different day in your body. The old Heraclitus, which I know Virginia loves, you can never, no man can step into the same river twice. It's always going to be different. And it's a great way to approach learning. And that is with an openness. So it's like Zen mind, beginner mind, or child mind, so that you don't know too much. Because sometimes when you know, it shuts down the capacity for actually learning anything. So if you come into your body with the idea that, oh, what is happening? What might feel good? What is of interest? As opposed to, this is how it's done right or wrong. And you just use these ideas of up, down, forward, backward, side, side as possibilities. And if you've done the cube work, maybe that's interesting to find those diagonals, find movement in that. So it's a little bit more, well, it's a lot more three-dimensional. You can let yourself go off of your axis a bit, finding more freedom. So I'm doing a pretty big exploration here. And what all of this stuff is doing is moving my organs around each other. It's moving my tissue. We are humans living on the earth, and the gravitational pull of the earth is supporting the creation of our form, supporting the creation of our fascia, supporting the creation of our bones, supporting the blood even. So if we move and we start to take ourselves off of vertical and into different planes, and if we move slowly, it allows the hydration of the body to kind of move through. If we move quickly, it won't move in the same way, right? If we move super fast and we're spinning around and around, we get that there's this centrifugal force that lets things move out. So finding that relationship with gravity, and allowing yourself to move with that. So not only are you drawing down to the ground, but there's also a reaction of coming up away from the ground, right? We tend to be vertical people, whether we're seated or walking. We tend towards the verticality if we're not sleeping. Yeah, so all of this is in the interest of hydrating tissue. If we think about like our rib cage, lungs, and heart, having some mobility in there is going to be hugely beneficial. When the areas move, things are less likely to get stuck in there, right? So the plaque that can build up in your body, if you have a very diverse range of movement in there, or even just a somewhat diverse range of movement, less likely for that plaque to build up. So the way that it forms, like if this is your your vein or your artery and things are moving through, the plaque is going to form where it's not having as much movement. This might become thinner and the plaque might be inside here, right? So if we think about that, it's such a weird thing to think about, but like moving our hearts, moving our lungs, letting the stuff flow through us. And also we talk about tension masks sensation. So like, right, when we're in these rigid systems, it's easy not to feel things. It's easy to avoid feeling things. And when we start to allow movement, maybe stuff that we've packed in there is going to arise. Maybe stuff that is unprocessed is going to come up. But coming into this, the beauty is you can always stop. You can always go, okay, I just need to take some time. And in a lot of these practices of like micro movement or continuum, there is a tremendous emphasis put on constructive rest, coming back into yourself and giving your body a chance to process. And the way that I like to do that with you guys is to just ask you, what are you noticing? What's going on? What did you feel? So this, now I'm asking, and you're feel free to unmute and respond to that.
I have feel a bit of a problem in my upper neck, but when I move with my pelvis, then it's easier also to move here, and I really enjoy that feeling. So that
Yeah. So we have this natural tendency, this writing response for our head to be erect. And sometimes you see dancers that are dancing and they're doing all this stuff, but their head is vertical the whole time. It always looks kind of weird. So when we can let the head soften and go along for the ride, that also allows us to change our perspective, right? And that's another of the beauties of the Laban space stuff is like, what's up there? What's down there? Like when our head is going off vertical, when our head is arriving in these different spatial places, there's a totally different viewpoint. And I think as a culture, as human beings, with our eyes on the front of our bodies, generally pointing forward, and with our phones pointing forward even more, that's a danger of being too sagittally oriented. So if we let our head go off, it starts to shift that. What else do you guys notice? Oh, I feel like Hanan. Oh, go ahead, Teresa, and then Hanan.
Hi, not to add a tangent, but in our West Coast, sort of the merge of Sarah Sheldon Mann and Anna Halpern, we call this chi cultivation, and I'm quite good at it. So when we started the centering, I also do something called Ace Aikido, like the Steven Seagal set. So you Ace stuff. So I was immediately dizzy. Like just, it was, I mean, I think I present as centered and calm. I'm not, wacky, but it made me really dizzy. And I was like, oh, I need coffee. So I came in and I started using my hand mill, and it's like the crunch, it's a spiral and crunchy. And I was like, oh, this is what it would feel like if I hadn't been taking care of my body. Because the chi cultivation, if I've been all, city, humpback, it feels like it. But since I'm so aced up and chi'd and I've been doing all my stuff, it was just like.
Can you show us your little, can you do your grinder one more time since I've spotlighted you now so people can see?
Sound.
That's what's like happening.
Yeah, you just got off the subway, you made 3 transfers. You're carrying a bag. But like the thing about the pandemic is like, I don't go anywhere. I've been like lying around on balls in my living room doing Laura Ward. So my body, when I do these, and I'm also primed for them. When I do the chi cultivation and the ace up, I'm just like, woohoo!
Yeah.
Damn, I'm dizzy. Like,
Well, that's where the lay down and just let it happen. Let the filtering. Now you stirred the stuff up. Let it settle again. Hanan and Walter, you're both unmuted. Either one of you want to say something? Hanan first. Maybe that's an accidental unmute. Walter.
Yeah, it took me back. I took a class with Danny Lepkoff. Is that his name? Was in the small movement, and we were like babies crawling, and a baby sometimes when it's first crawling crawls backwards and is getting into the smallest movement, and then with you, sense inside. The beginning exercise was loosen it all up, and then just really sense it inside. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. Quentin, Abby, Virginia, anyone want to say anything?
Hey, let's see. I don't know when it happened or what have you, but yeah, I've been doing some stuff. I had already done some stuff in mindfulness with proprioception and interoception, and Paul Linden has something with that too. He talks more about intention. And so when I was doing the exercises, it's for some reason it's happened more recently, and it's happened a couple times in the Friday group and this day, where it almost feels like it reminds me of like when a photographer, and I don't know the technical term, but it's like you see an image and then you see an after image. Sometimes they almost like try to take it and mess with time, where like a superhero like the Flash moves and you see the after image and you see the image that may seem ahead of them. It feels almost like, because I'm not using the language of aura or an aura or something like Kirlian photography, but it actually feels like when I stop moving, the muscle, the bones, all of that are still moving. Almost like part of my brain thinks it's still doing what it was doing before, like some kind of after image. And then because I know the time is in the future, or in the present, it feels a little weird because I know I'm not back there. So I'm standing, I'm still, or I'm doing a different motion, but it just reminds me of that. And also these after images that they have of different Indian deities, like Kali, that have many arms, and you're doing, and you see the different arms. Yeah. And it just feels like there's an after image, or my energy and my awareness are still in different positions than they were in previous moments.
Yeah.
And also that I'm still like, I'm still moving.
Yeah, so I want to actually tie the things that you and Teresa both said together in a way, and in sort of. First, I'm going to talk about your thing. So there's a thing we call in Laban trace forms, and in a way, that's exactly what that is. It's like if you took a picture of a person moving, and you'd see the trace form of their movement. So I feel like what you're talking about is feeling that trace form. It's feeling that energetic pattern of what happened. And the other thing, and how that ties into what Teresa was talking about, cultivating chi, is that I feel like this is a practice of enlivening. You are developing life force energy in the tissue and awareness. So anytime you're doing that, once it's enlivened, there's more possibility for that trace form, because the sort of cellular memory of movement is felt sense in the body. It's interoception, proprioception, kinesthetic awareness, all that kind of stuff. Like that's the muscle that we're cultivating, right? So that we have ultimately more choice in how we respond to things, and also in how we behave ourselves, like what feels good in our bodies. And so I've been doing all these little short videos on Facebook of micro movement, and looking back at them, I'm such a speed demon teaching. And I'm like, wow, I need to try and slow it down a little bit for the people who are a little more earthy to be able to come in for a landing with me or have any relationship. But what I've also said to some people is just every once in a while, pause me and let your body take it in. So since these are on YouTube also, you can look back and go, okay, I just need to take that idea in for a while, because any of these ideas we could spend hours working on, right? And if we were in a room together, I would be able to spend much more time with them. I feel like for me, the visual and the auditory of teaching on Zoom is accelerated. So it's like, it's harder for me to just dive in and feel like, oh, those little people on the screen, maybe they're okay, maybe they're not. If we're in the room, I can feel your bodies. Here I can see some of you, but it's a different thing. So that's just my big story about choice and access and making choices. Yes, Teresa.
I have sort of a question and an observation, and to throw in another teacher name and practice. Kumari Suraj teaches these Indian practices, and she always says you don't become a master until you're 40. And for me, you know, I learned battle styles and stuff that's micro movement, but I did them so hard until I became a mother and had to stop working and watch a baby grow. So it is, you know, it's Tai Chi type stuff. You have to be an old Chinese man to get these. And some people are born that way, but most people, I mean, what I've seen from being in these conscious practices from decades and decades, it takes decades to get micro movement to a point where you're not pushing, where you're really just
Allowing. Yeah.
It's just flowing. Yeah. And it takes being out of survival mode. It takes a lot of nervous system stuff that it's going to be individual and situational for how that's going to land. But I'm curious with you as a teacher and teaching different age groups, if you see that as true, that people who are older cultivate chi more naturally.
I think that it's that at a certain age, you don't have to prove as much. At a certain point of doing the practice, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people perceive ultimately. Like for me, it kind of matters because I'm teaching it and I want people to be able to see what I'm doing. And there's the sort of transmission aspect. And it's very interesting with teaching different ages, because I have worked with kids on this and worked with kids in like conservatory schools for dance and music. And all different income levels and all different sort of levels of privilege. And I've found that actually during the pandemic, some of the kids especially need time to come in and process. And when they're given that time, they cotton onto it right away. They get it, that it's like, oh, there's this other whole world, which I feel like I mean, my dad was having us do like transcendental meditation when I was 10 years old, playing soccer, lay down on the field, listen to some music, imagine your perfect game, which is when I started imagining choreography instead. So it was like, oh, I'm a dancer. And I had to kind of make that choice at that point. But cultivating an okayness with whatever is going on without the ego need to prove. And, you know, it's still a dance that's always there. You know, somebody said something and that's my field. And do I need to prove myself now? Or do I need to offer information? Or can I step back away from that? Or, you know, I'm not talking about when I'm in my class, but in the different communities that I'm in, it's like, and I like to come in the inquiry and in the child mind. So people often think I'm a total idiot and don't know anything because I haven't opened my mouth and talked about it. Like it's easy to assume if you ask a lot of questions that somebody doesn't know anything. So it's really funny how people, you know, come to being. I do feel like it's easier for women, and I feel like, and certain men that aren't in the need to like put their foot down and lead and boss people around, or women, the same thing. If you want to control people, back off a little bit, right? Because it's going to be hard. If you're in that, I want everyone to do it my way. Can you, and I'm reading a question from Quentin. Can you sense the trace forms when you walk into a dojo, dance studio, church? Why not? Can the trace form be nourishing in any way? Yeah, of course. And yes, I would say if you're walking down the street, say you're walking down the street behind a person who's just had a fight on the phone, you can hear them. Your whole nervous system is not just taking in the sound of their voice. You're taking in their whole energy pattern. You're in the trail of their energy, right? You're in the trail, and it's like, our nervous systems are all in relationship with each other, whether we want them to be or not. So, and when you're in the presence of the holy, when we're in the ascended, or even the holy, the earth nature, right? The presence of nature, we can find that. So there's so many, we've got another person coming in. We're really late in the game, but that's okay. There's so many different ways that we can sense what's going on a nervous system level, and all of that, like all of the Laban movement analysis, I would say, is we are reading each other all the time. But how much are we telling ourselves the truth about our own feelings? How much are we like, I'm not angry. No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not angry, right? How much, or, oh my God, I'm so upset. I can't take it. Like how much, or I'm not, that didn't hurt my feelings. Like how much do we have to armor our own bodies and our own selves to exist in our culture? And if we stop and start to let some of that armoring go and let our vulnerability come up, how is that treated within the culture? Hello, Natasha. Welcome. You're in sort of the end game of this class, but you know, what I'd like to do is actually move a little bit more. So what I'd like to do is take the ideas. So it'll be very improvisational, but I want to play with the ideas of forward, backward, up, down. And also the ideas of the cube. So like the ideas of the octahedron, up and down, finding our ways up, finding our ways down, maybe finding in different ways and feeling what it feels like in your body, like to raise your arms. What does that bring up for you? To drop down into the earth. What does that bring up? Like, are you transcending and grounding yourself? Or does it feel like you're giving something up, or you're getting too high? Like, what does that feel like for you? What is it to be in the up and downness for you? What is it to be in the vertical? Do you want to be high? Do you want to be low? Do you feel like you need them both? Just tuning into sort of the archetype of verticality. What is it to be erect or to collapse? Like all those things are happening. To be very strong or very light, like letting our movement be strong and light. So those are Laban efforts. So lightness has a tendency and affinity to rise. Strength has a tendency and affinity to come down. But we could go down very light and we could go up very strong. I mean, it can be either way, but just feeling what that is for you. To go up and down. Or even just to gesture in the vertical. If you just take it into gestures, right? We come through prayer if we're gesturing the vertical. We're diving down, diving up. And then go ahead and start to add the side. And you can, we can ripple it, we can play with it. Big, small. It could just be a little bit of side, a little bit of horizontal, or you can really expand, crossing, opening, crossing, opening, or taking one body part or another body part, just feeling how does that side space, and we're going kind of fairly just dimensionally, just side, not adding too much forward, backward, not adding too much up and down. What's there for you? And again, how is the crossed position? How is the open position? What's familiar? What does it feel like? Where have you seen this before? Where have you done this before? Yeah, so things that come up for me, like blocking something, don't let it go past, right? Even those games. Or expansion, opening up to everything, right? Serving the sandwich to everyone. Have some of my banquet, share it with me. And then let's move into the sagittal, the forward, backward. So those were just two little images that came up in the horizontal, which aren't, I think normally I'm not thinking about blocking, but it was a very sort of basketball moment, maybe because Teresa's got her ball. Backwards and forwards, finding the front space, sagittal, back space behind you. And you can do either arm or just body, moving forward, moving back, advancing and retreating. Different ways, yeah. And how does it feel? How does it feel to advance and to move forward? How does it feel to retreat, to go back? Moving into the backspace. I feel like backspace for me is often a very, I have more perspective from here. When I go into the thing, ooh, here I am, right? If I take it back, I can see all the space around me. I'm right in it. I don't need to do anything here. I can ease backwards. And now let's go into diagonal. So let's imagine we're in a box, in a cube, and you're hitting corners and opposite corners. So like right forward high to left back low, or left forward high to right back low. And I'm doing this using both sides of my body, but you could cross and open, finding those corners of your cube. If you were in a cube, how would you move around? Touching corners, touching edges. Just feeling what that feels like. Going out and coming in. I could go to 3 corners all at the same time, right? Or 3 other corners. Crossing. What happens in those places? How does it feel? What's familiar? What's unfamiliar? Now, can I take that same idea and just make it small, like playing in the cube in micro movement where it's barely moving? You could do it standing in a crowd and nobody would necessarily know you're doing it. Can you take it into something that is just not huge and obvious, but playing with the idea of those diagonals again? Right forward high, right forward low, left forward low, right back low, left back low, right back high, left back high, finding different body parts maybe to move into those diagonals and feel how that how the response of the sort of, we call them the bony landmarks, like the hip bones, the shoulders, the places of your body where you can really feel architecture. How's that moving? And then within that architecture, how's the fascia moving? How are the organs moving? Can we tune into that? What's the relationship of that central column or that river of the spine? How is that doing? And I could just go micro in my head and neck. And as I'm doing that, I'm also going to go tail. So it's not very micro. I'm moving pretty big and obvious, but it's not like out there, exercise class big. It's more internal. Try taking a very narrow stance. So it could be seated. It can also be standing, but narrow it in, staying in a very sort of near reach space, close kinesphere, letting yourself, maybe actually it's become very sensual for me, having an exploration, feeling my skin. How is that in that close kinesphere? Things can cross, things can open. And then getting into like a medium kinesphere where things are there's a little bit of air around my body and letting myself kind of micro move into that. And the image I'm going to have is like an octopus, like a sort of slow moving octopus, letting the tentacles of the arms or the legs, the limbs of the arms and the legs, and then all the tentacles on the arms and the legs kind of wave and flow around. How is that? In a sort of near mid-reach space. So we're not right close to our bodies now. We're kind of in the spaciousness between the edge of our kinesphere and the center, in this middle space. Nothing too threatening there. Maybe it feels uncomfortable, who knows? And then let it go out into like a big kinesphere, like really take up space, get big, all different body parts reaching out and away. You can also come back in, so you can play with expanding out and then coming back in, growing and shrinking. Yeah, pausing helps me feel. Exactly. So yeah, anytime we need to process, just stop, let it go. Or make it so small that you can sense into it. Yeah. So now start to play with anything, near reach space, far reach space, growing, shrinking, micro movement, huge movement. In the interests today of finding out what feels comfortable, where are your preferences right now? Could be different tomorrow, could be different in 10 minutes, but right in this moment, what's the call? What does the body want? Maybe it's stillness, maybe it's fluidity, maybe it's some really punchy movement. Maybe you're like, oh, I got too much energy, I need to punch it out. Ah. Maybe it's that, but just listening in and, oh. And actually there is that your little bird? It's pretty cool. Listening in to what feels good. In the continuum world, there's a breath called the who breath, which is a very active, activating breath. So it's not always like soft, gentle. Sometimes it's very hoo, hoo, ha, ha, depending on what we need to do with our system. So let's just activate up a little bit right now with this continuum breath. It's called the who breath. And it's almost like you're a monkey and you're like, hoo, hoo, ha, and it's huffing and puffing, making faces, ha, ha, hoo, 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 ha, ha, ha. And you can see, like, I've got this rhythm with it, which not obviously, which might ground my energy. Hoo, hoo, ha, ha. And anytime you need to, rein it in, stop, come into stillness, or come into tiny little micro movement. Or keep going with it, like give yourself that, I don't know, I've been in classes where they're doing a lot of really slow stuff and I'm like, I need to move, I can't do the slow stuff. And then I've also had the opposite where they're doing a lot of big stuff and I'm like, oh my God, I just need to lay down. So coming in, what kind of movement is belly dancing? It's a lot of different kinds of movement. There's a lot of fluidity, there's a lot of rhythm, there's a lot of, it's interesting because a belly dance teacher that I know took a continuum class and she's like, I don't need to do that. I already do that. But with belly dancing, it's specified flow, even though it becomes very free, but there's definite things that you're doing to let that go. So I feel like there's different, if there's a right and wrong to something, or if you can do something better, that's a form-based thing. If there is no right and wrong and there's no judgment within it, that's a freedom-based thing. And so I feel like belly dance is a little bit more in the form-based thing than the total freedom, although they are jiggling, they are moving. Yeah, you have a question or something to say, Teresa?
So my best friend, since I took Fosse at like 8 years old, is now like the premier Silk Road linguist. I'm working on her really closely with this language project I'm doing, which is so close to Laban. And what she would say as like a non-Burning Man Silk Road linguist PhD is that these are languages. It is very Laban. Each of them, the real belly dances, each of them, it is so close to Laban because it's language. It is, if you're doing it, I mean, there's this, whatever tribal belly dancing is, whatever this, belly danceogram is, that's probably flow or, something else, but it is so close to Laban. I am working with this friend very closely on a language project, and it's so, and that's the same, you become a master at 40, because mastering that micro movement, I find that kids go, they want to fling it, and technically it's folkloric because it's a language.
So let me say something about that mastering the movement and the 40 thing. And one thing that we might say is that children have an incredible access to free flow, and adults have an incredible access to bound flow. So bound flow it's stoppable. And these are Laban efforts. And it doesn't mean how hard you work effort. It's more of the dynamics of the movement. So free flow, it's very childlike, it's very unstoppable, and it's flow. It's continuing. There's a sense of fluidity to it. Bound flow, very stoppable, very adult. It could be going fast, but it's got this capacity to stop. There's control, there's muscular control. And so I think really to master things, you have to have that sense of freedom. In my opinion, to master movement as you get older, you also have to be able to let go of the armoring. You have to be letting go of these layers of holding pattern that you may have, well, that we've all adapted to. You know, they're there all the time, like my jaw. I'm always clenching my jaw, or even just the face I make, right? Of being Laura. What's my face? What's my normal face pattern? And so like when we start to learn just to open those up, so we could micro movement just our face. And it would be like, let's do this short micro movement exercise for face. And this breath is called the Petal Breath. It's a continuum breath. It's an Emily Conrad breath. And basically it's like you're a flower that's just undulating open and closed. And so it's going to look really weird. I'm going to make faces, and I'm not necessarily making the faces are being made by my face. When you start to learn to let go of the control, which maybe I can do on screen and maybe I can't. But so it's like an O sound or an oo sound, but your mouth is going to be doing this. So I'll just demonstrate and then you can join in. You can breathe in whenever you need to, take resting breaths whenever you need to. It's possible that you'll do overtones in that, which is also like incredibly amazing for your parasympathetic nervous system. So just see what happens. So I noticed like this pull into the back with my head and my tissue. So there are those patterns like the arch and the curl, which sometimes we need more of one or the other. Like sometimes we need more of enclosing and sometimes we need more of this kind of opening. And so if you start to do that for a while, it might become apparent that, oh, I need to do this thing. So that's just listening into your body. Let's just do it for a couple more breaths. Yeah. So taking just a second, just close your eyes or leave your eyes open, just breathe and feel into whatever that brought up. If micro movement is happening, let it happen. Yeah, it's released this whole thing in my neck, jaw, and particularly in the back of my head.
I feel washed.
Nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I feel like, oh, all that stuff, which I usually don't do that have like the, well, I don't know, the continuum breath, like once you can really dive into that, it's the next level stuff and it's unbelievable. So any other reflections, anything you want to say before we close it out here? Natasha, how are you? You can write in the chat, or where are you? Sounds like Eastern European name there. Yeah. How is everybody? Anything to report, Peen?
Well, yeah, I have also these last weeks a lot of jaw cleansing in the night. So I've like feel it in my neck and in my head, and so the humming, what we did last week already, and now I think it's really, really helping. So thank you for those aiding thoughts, or I don't know how to say it. My translation is a bit weird.
It's okay. And I think that that's a thing, like when we go into these certain levels of the intelligence of our own bodies, sometimes other things just go offline entirely. Sometimes like my mathematics skills are just gone if I'm really in an embodied state. But sometimes there you have a sharpness too. So it can be really anything, and all the different sounds really affect in different ways. Yeah, I'm glad that Virginia loved all the sounds. You're in Croatia. Yeah, nice to see you. Welcome. I would
Hello.
love to visit Croatia someday.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for the class. And I say that in a very understated way. Have you experimented, because you've brought it up since I've been aware of your presence in the world, kind of this rhythm that I don't know how to how to name it for you, but you brought it up many times about, you know, your rhythm or how fast you're expressing yourself. Have you played with finding your own natural rhythm? Is that your natural rhythm? And the other thing about it is that breath that you did, it reminded me of like being in a movement class with someone or watching a video where I either slow down their movement to a micro movement level, or I try a micro movement and then try at the same time, try to do another rhythm while as close to the same time as I'm doing it. You know, like, you know, maybe I do some kind of ab work where I slowly bring a micro movement in, but bring in my ab, but then I do something else with my eyes, or my breathing is faster than the ab movement, but I try to change rhythms.
Yeah, that rhythm thing. So I've been playing with this for a long time, and yeah, this is my natural rhythm. And I mean, my natural rhythm is faster than this. It's very high speed, which doesn't mean that I can't slow down, but I think that there are certain ways for me to slow down more. And it's also like a question of, do I really need to slow down? Like, do I need to slow down so that all the earth people, or the really earth-based people, can get it? Or are they interested in it anyway? You know, and often I find what you're saying, back to the other thing about saying what you're feeling something with your abs, but then you're doing something over here and something over there. That's like building the muscle of awareness inside, right? So sometimes, like, if we can do something like, let's say I can clench my fist really hard, clench, 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 I can feel it, then I let it go. And if I do that a few times, I build a sort of awareness in there. But then what if I try something totally different with it? So like with your abs, like I would start playing with how you're doing how you're feeling them. What's happening with them? Like, how do you think about engaging them? Is it one thing? Is it another thing? Like, to develop a sense of diversity in the possibilities which any one area can do. Does that talk to your question at all, Quentin?
That was helpful. I enjoyed that. And I thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And I'll say one more thing. There's a meditation teacher called Daniel Ingram, and he is faster than me. And I think he's about the only person that I've ever come across that is more of a speed demon than me, that's like not on drugs or whatever. So that I was like, whoa, he is going fast. Yeah, no worries, Natasha. Yeah, you can always play in at laying on the floor and just feeling it, or sitting, or however you want to do it. All right, well, we've come to the end of the hour, so I'm going to finish it off. And thank you guys all for being here. Really a pleasure to see you and listen to you. And also, just to let you know, for those that come to the Playful Connection, I think that tomorrow is the last Playful Connection, at least for the summer, because I have other things I need to do on Fridays. And now that things are opening up in New York, I want to be able to be outside, as Walter wants to do too. So if you can come, we're going to do some kind of ending. What does that say, Teresa? Can't hear you.
Going places.
Going places. Going places with a pink pen. I like it. Yeah, I got things to do. Yeah, thank you, Natasha. Thanks, Virginia, Quentin, Walter, Teresa, Peen. Nice to see you all.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.